Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back. I hope everyone's lunch. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our coordinators for the upcoming session to all of you. We warmly welcome Architect Sanjay Mohe, Architect Govind Rao, and Professor Arun Swaminathan to our induction program. We will be holding this session titled Joy of Architecture together. I will take a few minutes to introduce them to you. Architect Sanjay Mohe is the founding partner of a Bangalore-based firm, Mindspace, founded in 2004. Architect Mohe has had many positions of repute prior to that. He has had a working association of 21 years with Chandravarkar and Thakur, besides which his experience also includes a short stint in late Charles Correa's office and in Saudi Arabia. An alumni of JJ College of Architecture, his work straddles a spectrum of award-winning projects, institutions, residences, housing, research labs, memorials, libraries, etc. Sir has also received several honors such as JK Great Masters Award for Lifetime Achievement in 2019, Golden Architect Award by A plus D and Spectrum Foundation, A plus D and Spectrum Foundation Architecture Award, JK Cement Architecture Award, and many more. Architect Mohe is a well-known face adorning a lot of architectural forums throughout the years. It is an honor to have you here, sir, to address our guest members.
Um, okay, I was talking about architect Govind Rao. Sir he graduated from College of Fine Arts and Architecture, JNTU, Hyderabad in 1984 and did his master's program in infrastructure planning, University of Stuttgart, Germany in 1995. He worked with eminent architects like Sumit Ghosh and Associates, New Delhi, and architect Sanjay Mohe. He has work experience abroad as well. His works include houses, housing, hospitality, commercial and interior projects. He has been teaching for the last 10 years in architecture colleges in and around Bangalore. We are delighted to have you join us today, sir. Last but not the least, never the least, in fact, our design chair, Professor Arun Swaminathan. Sir is a respected alumni of CEPT Ahmedabad. His academic career began with teaching school children through NIE and a voluntary organization called Each One Teach One. This led to his teaching in architecture and design, starting with RV College, which he continues to date as the design chair, to many other institutions over the years. His primary teaching interest continues to be with the Foundation Program for Architecture and Design. As for the architectural practice, he continues to be involved with projects which have a personal, social, or environmental concern. His research interest has been in lightweight structures, which, apart from working on innovative projects, he conducts workshops to enthuse young students across the country. I can rightfully say about Professor Arun that apart from a selective architecture practice, he is an academician, writer, children's cartoonist, and illustrator. His other passions include, amongst other things, scale model aircraft, military history, literature, the great outdoors, and many more exciting things. Welcome, sir. I would now like to just hand over the session to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sanjay? Welcome, Sanjay. Thanks, Govind. To unmute.
Yeah, I will start sharing.
It'll be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have to allow us to share.
Yeah, Alicia?
Yes, sir. One second. I'll stop sharing. So please try once again.
Yeah. Can you see it? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll start. Congratulations to all of you for taking admission in the wonderful college. Actually, joining, probably you have already started attending these sessions, and it's probably not your first day. The college is going to start, I heard, next week. But there is always that excitement when you join a new college, because the subjects are new, the faculty is new, the friends are new, and there's so much of excitement. Though these are little funny times where you are all sitting at your home, but hopefully you will all come and join the college, and you will make so many new friends, great mentors, and great environment to be in. So, so joining architecture is, how do I go down? Joining architecture is it's quite a fun, actually, because it's not like other profession. Here you are paid to create ideas, and that is what is exciting. And what they say is, if you love something, really, then it's not a work. And for rest of your life, you don't have to really work because you're enjoying what you're doing. So creativity, creating new ideas is something which you look forward to, something which is every day. It's not like some boring accounting or something like that. It's something which you create and wait for it for the next day to come. How is it going to come up? And also, so you have an exciting, kind of career throughout your future life. Now, for Charles Correa used to always say, that why Mahatma Gandhi is called architect of India and why not dentist of India, let's say. So why architect? Because you have a vision to look into the future. And this is what you have to really start learning in this college. Once you join the course, it's about vision. It's about looking across and forecasting what would happen. And that's what is a great fun about developing that vision. So what I'm going to show today is about how to see things around. And I'm sure you know how it is, but it's about being curious. Now, when all of us were of that age, everything is new for you. It's not just the visual part, but the new smell, the touch. Even a small child knows when the mother touches a child, the child can differentiate between the touch of mother and somebody else. So it's about feeling the surroundings, seeing things, smelling things, hearing things, and everything is new. So there is an excitement. But what happens is, as you start growing up, you tend to take certain things for granted, because you stop questioning. You say, "Oh, this is what it is," and that's where the idea of questioning comes in. And that's what one has to really look at. Now, there is one story which I tell every student, and I don't mind repeating it again and again because it's very important. Now, when I joined JJ College, it was first year and probably one of the first weeks. And in one of the studios, one of our professors asked us to define a table. And we were all fresh from school, and also we started with 4 legs, with wood, and with a smooth surface and things like that. So he started questioning, and finally we realized it's not about having 4 legs. It doesn't have to. It can have 1 leg or even no leg. It can be even cantilevered surface.
Kirtana.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
It's clear, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what you realize that what you have to really look at is provide a surface which is at appropriate height. So if you are having a coffee, it might be at a low level. If you are dining, it might be at a slightly higher level, or if you are standing and discussing, it could be still higher level. It could be suspended, it could be inflated, you can even dig a hole and then sit around. So there are so many possibilities. So it's about defining and reanalyzing and coming back to the basics. And that's what I am talking about, looking at a world around you. And every object is an idea. When you see an object around you, you look at it as an idea. And the famous architect Louis Kahn, he spoke about spirit of spoon. And he said spoon is a connection of a bowl and a handle. So you take a bowl and you take a handle and you connect it. and then you can lift a liquid and then you can create a spoon out of it. Now, how do you really create that? So then you start analyzing, and it says that for different functions, you will have different kinds of spoons and different shapes. So it is still bowl and a handle, or a surface and a handle. And you start using it for different surfaces. So you start analyzing each activity and then start taking it forward. And then it doesn't stay at that. You start developing so many different forms. So basically, you are looking at these two elements of a bowl and a handle, and then you are interpreting it into so many different functions, and then that becomes a fun for us to invent things and to go beyond that. But it doesn't stop there, because then you have a specific reason, because it's not only everyone are able bodies. Like there are some people who have problems of lifting things and all. So you need different grips, different connections. There are some of these people who have these issues about they can't bend their neck, and also you have to develop a different surface. You have to develop different grips. So you have to go to the next level and start analyzing how that spoon can be used. So it's about using it. It's not just about looking at it, but using it, feeling it, holding it. And then you can create art out of it. It doesn't have to stay just as a functional element. It becomes an artistic object. And when that artistic object, this object on the right side, actually that's also a spoon, but it becomes part of it almost becomes a sculpture. And then it becomes part of your daily household activity. And that's where it gains a different character. It doesn't even remain an art, but it becomes a functional art. And that's what one has to understand, how you transcend that functionality into something much more artistic. Now, look at this spoon where you just introduce this small element and the liquid can stay there and it can be a stable thing onto the table. So that's kind of one intervention. But you should know how to pack it, how to transport it, how to sell it, how to market it. So that creativity doesn't stop there. You have to take it forward. How to really handle it, and finally how it is going to be sold into the shops, packed, transported from the manufacturing place into the trucks, into different warehouses, how compact it could be, how it would be space saving, and how you would pack it. And just to sort of take clues, you have to start looking at nature. Now, if you look at some of these seeds, the way they are packed within that, that container or that bead, and at the right time, that whole bead opens up and each of that straw starts traveling. And why that seed has to travel, because the trees are stationary. Like for animals, you don't have an issue of, they can move, but the trees can't move, but they want the seeds to go as much away from them as possible so that they germinate, and then it's about the survival and the spread of the genes. So just for that, the nature invents this whole idea of opening that, and then that seed starts, when it gets heated by the sun, it opens up and then it starts moving out. So why I'm relating it to this is you have to understand clues from the nature. You have to look at a nature from different perspective. The nature which has evolved over millions of years has every solution, every design solution. Only you should have eyes to sort of look at it. So it's a process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Now, what they say it's very easy to learn, but it's very difficult to unlearn. Now, if you learn cycling or swimming when you are 5 years old, even if you have not cycled or swam for 10 years, you would still be able to do it, because it becomes part of your system. So there are a lot of things as you grow up, you take it for granted. You stop questioning it. And the whole intention of way of relearning is to look at it, redefine it, and say, how can I do it differently? So I'll give you, so it's about science and art. Our right brain is more about art, music, colors, and all, as you know, and the left brain is more logical. It's about engineering, mathematics, and So one part is measurable, and other part is immeasurable. So one part is about understanding functionality, understanding the logic, technology. The other part is to take it forward and add colors to it, make it more creative, make it more fun. And architecture or any creative process is a combination of both. It has to work, and still it has to do something more than normal. Now, I'll give you one more example, like spoon. Now, if you look at, I mean, the whole intention of this talk is you have to learn to look at things around you like ideas. I mean, don't look at them as objects, look at them as ideas. So now, if you see these different bottles, there are different shapes, different forms. But the reason, the whole idea is you should be able to hold it properly and drink out of it. And while holding it, that grip has to be such that it has to measure around your palm. It has to have some kind of it shouldn't slip off. So probably you would create some texture, some ribs and things like that. The second thing is you should be able to drink water. So that neck has to be such that you would be able to control the water as it drops into your mouth. But if you're looking at, let's say, a pickle bottle, that neck will become much bigger. It doesn't have to be that, because you have to use a spoon and then the whole shape of the bottle changes. So you would start designing each bottle for each function. So each one is like an idea. So if you want to lift this, which is probably a heavier can, you will probably incorporate the handle within that or that way. Or so each function changes, each in relation to each function, the idea change. But this designer, what he does is he uses these bottles like a building block. So you interlock each bottle and create a wall out of it or create a screen out of it. So instead of creating so much of dump and, instead of that idea of recycling, this is one imaginative way of using this bottle. And then he creates this grip kind of thing, texture onto the surface so that it doesn't slip off. And probably you can even use some adhesive to sort of put them together. And this neck gets interlocked into each other. So these are the ideas where you take the thing forward. But you don't have to even stop at the functionality. You go beyond and then make it more artistic object. And if you see this Murano glass work and all, they have these amazing creations. So the same bottle becomes something else, and that's where the idea of art and function comes in. So I was talking about that idea of integrating the left brain and the right brain, and then when it comes to all of us. Actually, generating ideas is not a problem for all of us, I think. And I always give the example that if you read a magazine and then go and watch a movie based on that magazine, you will never be happy, because what you heard, you would have read through that book that would have been, much more interesting than what you see. So your brain by default keeps thinking of so many ideas all the time. Now, what you would learn in this college would be to reject unwanted ideas and then keep something which is of value, and that's what is more important. To come down to something which is of importance, and then taking it forward. Now, I was talking about learning from nature, and this is one nice example, to just study a fish and how that form would have developed. Now, this form is such that it has to negotiate through the water and move through water. So in order to create that least resistance towards the movement, it has to become pointed towards the direction of the movement. In the cross section, it has to be thin and long so that it becomes, it can negotiate the water, the frictional losses are less. The surface is extremely smooth, so again, you have less friction, and then you navigate through this tail, and you sort of develop the, in terms of movements. But this is a kind of a very, very functional form which nature would have evolved over millions of years. But nature doesn't stop there, it starts developing different forms. So the principle is same, the idea is same, the cross section is more or less same, but the forms are totally different. And then nature doesn't stop there, it adds colors into it also. So that's where the creativity has absolutely no end. Now these objects, what I was talking about, these are all protected. These are all kept in the house. They are sort of, you have a kind of a shelter to protect it. But when it comes to architecture, it gets subjected to weathering. And, it has to sort of weather over the years. You have to have all these forces of nature, what you call it, this panchabhutas, elements of nature. They are constantly acting upon you. The rain, the wind, the heat, and everything. And that's what really sort of degenerates the form, and that kind of a degeneration happens. And imagine what these Egyptians created. These are something about 4,000-year-old structures, and they would have faced so many of these monsoons and so much of wind and all, and and still they have managed to, at least partially withstand that. So whatever you create has to withstand these forces, and for that you have to really study these elements. And that's the reason all these 5 elements of ancients, as you call it, you have to learn to start responding to that. And that's what is the fun in doing architecture. It's extremely simple, but you have to be observant. You have to learn to see these things as part of the nature. So how do you bring light into the space? That becomes an important thing. So you take a cube, the space is very dark inside, but the moment you start making punctures, you allow the light to come in. And then because that light comes in, you start enjoying that whole space changes within that. And then you can create different forms and see how the light changes. And this is something which you would keep learning. And even at my age, even after doing, seeing so many things being built, you still keep wondering and you still keep learning. So you start learning how the light comes in, how the shadows fall, and how the space changes around you. So these are certain examples, but there is a method to this because it's a logic, it's a mathematics. So you would have seen this what you call it, the solar clock, and you can exactly pinpoint on, say, 7th January or whatever today's date, at this particular time, what would be the angle of the sun. And now you have so many softwares to do that. So in our days, we used to study these kind of diagrams and then try to track the sun. Now you have softwares to do that. And this is something which typically we do, but don't worry about it now. But just to be aware of what you would be doing after maybe 2-3 years, that you can actually create this whole space, and you can track the sun exactly at on April or 8 p.m. how the light would be. So we do that, which you would also be doing after a few years. And this is what was the rendering which was done on April at 11 o'clock. And this is the picture of the real space taken on the same time, on same day. So this is the rendering, and that's the real thing. So there is a lot of fun in doing architecture. All these things you would keep learning. Dealing with water, all of you are aware how important the water is, how important the conservation of water and recycling of water. So this is something which you have to create a place for water and make sure that you recycle it and recharge it. You have to understand the rainfall of each place. It would be in Bangalore, it would be different. In a coastal region like Goa or Mumbai, it will be totally different. Or in Rajasthan, it would be different. You have to understand how the wind flows, and then there are wind catchers. You would have probably seen it. These are traditional ways in the deserts. These are mechanical ways of bringing wind into it. But don't worry about it. What is simple way of understanding wind is this charpai, Indian charpai. And this is perfectly designed for our climate. So when you sleep here, because of this porosity of the material, the wind flows onto your back also to some extent, and then you don't sweat even when during the summer. So you have to understand the movement of the air. And if you just to relate to, I'm always referring to objects around you as ideas. So if you look at it as an idea, and if you want to see the implication of that in architecture, this is in Cambodia, where these are the structures which are, and Cambodia is very hot and dry, humid climate, so not dry, sorry, it's hot and humid, and you need breeze onto your body because of that climate. And that's why they lift up this entire floor so that the breeze can flow, the water can flow below it. But this is the floor of that house. If you look at this floor, that floor is like that charpai, so where the air can come from below as well. So you are not only taking air from the side, you are taking air from below. And then you don't need air conditioning, so you have to understand that once you understand dealing with forces of nature and then living with these forces of nature, you get rid of all these mechanical things like air conditioning, and even you can get rid of probably fan as well. So that is what you have to learn while doing architecture, how to manage these forces of nature and then work with them. Now, if you want your building to last for 100 years or 200, or like what I said, what I showed you about Egyptian architecture, which survived for last 4,000 years, so probably even more. In order to do that, you have to understand technology, and that's what the engineering is. So you, again, though it is mathematics, there is simplicity to it, and I think Professor Arun sir will teach you, in a very, very different way, and he makes it so easy to learn structures that you would enjoy learning that. So this is one of the sketch how the forces transmit. So when you, let's say, pull water out of a well or something, you start pulling it, or if you are pulling something. So how do you really represent that in architectural form? So we had done one of these structures, which is actually a large factory and which needed a very large span, about 40 meters. So each of these elements, it's almost like that sketch what I showed you. One leg forward, one leg backward, and you are pulling yourself, your torso back, and then pulling this thread back. So you have these cables which are turning back, and then they are anchored back into the ground. So this is how the form develops. So start looking at objects around you. Try to understand, find the inner beauty, because each of these bone has a particular, the nature has designed it. So this bone becomes flexible to take the form when you move. Some of these are in compression, some of it is in tension. So the whole engineering is all based on that, and that's the beauty of this form. This is the beauty of our own body, how the structure works. So before going into mathematics and try to learn about learning the mathematics, try to understand forces, how it behaves and what is the beauty of it. So it is inevitable for your generation now is to understand technology. So you would be dealing with new forms of vehicles, driverless vehicles, maybe the whole IT revolution, and so you have to be open to understand the technology. But again, coming back to nature and understanding structure of the nature. Now just look at these two things. I mean, there is something called fractals, and then the way the nature sort of takes one idea, one form, and starts repeating it and creating structures out of it. So there are certain trees which branch off like a Y, and then that Y becomes, an element, and every branch opens out into this Y, and then finally forms this structure. But there are certain other trees which open out into these three kind of pods. And this three becomes an element, and that forms into a structure. So this is like a fractal, and that you find it in every form. You find it in your blood cells, you'll find it in your veins, you'll find it in the way the earth, when it is dried, when it cracks, you will find that. So there is some kind of a hidden geometry into nature. And if you are aware of it while walking, or now when you go out and start looking at the trees, just try to observe these things. Can you find some link there, So now if you look at this tree, it is branching like a Y everywhere. Every element is like a Y or a V, whatever you call it. But if you see this temple tree, this is a common, what is it called? Plumeria. So this plumeria always branches in these three. You will have three edges here, three here, and everywhere. And then even when it becomes a very complex form, it is always these three of them. So, and then finally it becomes a structure, and you can actually transform it and make it into a large, probably like a shell, or you can make it into a large umbrella or whatever. So that's fun. And if this is, what it is, this is cutting an onion. And once you cut it, you get all these different forms. So start observing inner beauty. It's not only, you don't stop. That's what I started the whole presentation with, that question mark. Start questioning, start learning. Now there is a strong relationship between a climate and a customs, because most of our behavior, most of our, the way we sort of react to certain things, it all depends on our climate. Now, why we leave our shoes outside when we come in? Nowadays we have changed, but in a traditional house, if you over the years we have been doing it, removing shoes outside and then coming into this. And why we did it? Because we sat on the floor and ate, sitting on the floor. And why we sat on the floor? Because our floor, we allowed us to sit on the floor. Now, if we were born in Western country, in Europe, the floor would be, when there is minus 10 degrees outside, so it's not possible to sit on the floor. So they invented dining table, they invented chairs, which is like an insulation from the floor. And then now we have copied that culture and we started using table and chair and all. But traditionally, this is what we did. And because of that, we sat on the floor, and that's why our windows and all started from the floor level. So if you see old Havelis and all, you'll find people sitting on the floor and the breeze coming onto your body. And these windows came right from the lower level. So start questioning. Same thing happens with the way the traditional dresses have come up. Now architecture is called as shelter as well. So you are creating shelters, and the first form shelter is clothing. So if you study traditional clothing, there are a lot of clues to develop architecture. And in Rajasthan, when you have a hot, dry climate, you need insulation on your head. So because you don't want that hot 45-degree sun to heat up the head. So you have this huge insulation, and the same thing gets reflected into architecture. So you have this huge insulation onto on the top of the structure to keep the heat away. Now, if you look at Kerala, where there is a hot, humid temperature, you don't want to use this heavy clothing because you want a breeze to come onto your body. And again, if you see architecture of that region, it's more porous, more perforated. It's like verandas where you allow the breeze to come through. So there is a strong relationship between traditionally how we dressed and how we lived. So architecture and the way you dressed had a very, very strong connection. Now, our whole intention is, the idea is to define a space or define enclosure. Now, once you join architecture, this word space, you will keep hearing it for rest of your life. Every day we talk about space, space, space. And we are talking about defined space. So you have to define it. The moment you define it, it becomes an enclosure. And then how do you define it? There are different ways of defining an enclosure. Just by putting fabric in front of you, you are sort of defining that enclosure. You can just close your eyes, meditate, and you can actually get into a different world altogether. And you are creating your own space, you know. So even doing meditation is a kind of creating an enclosure. Just having a shade under a tree and, you know, sleeping under that. So you are kind of defining a space there. You may not call it an enclosure, but you are defining a space. Here also you are defining a space. You are sort of creating your own enclosure. You just spread a mat on a large lawn and you start a picnic. What you are doing is you are defining your borders, and that becomes your territory. That becomes your enclosure, and you start communicating with your family, friends, whatever. When the third dimension comes, you just start with these dots and these columns, and you are defining a plane here. That plane becomes dots, probably that those columns become dot, and you start connecting these dots, and that creates that dynamism. The way your vision moves is from one dot to another to third to fourth, and then there's a lot of dynamics, like observing that. Now this structure I always like. There are these huge 4 gateways around one large Maidan. You know? This is in Andhra. And then just by doing these 4 gateways, you know, you are defining a space. So we were doing this this entrance for one of our clients, Dr. Reddy's, and they have these they had these values of you know, that life science and medicine, and also they work with this medicine. So so these 3 pylons, we tried to create an enclosure out of it, and this is how it looks like. So just by adding these 3 elements, you are enclosing a space, or even a fog. You know, even when you go to Nandi Hill and look at a fog, you are creating an enclosure. This is used a lot on a stage, but where you just create a light and then you are creating a space around you, or a glass box, or the glass box becomes even more defined as you go below ground. It becomes more defined and becomes even more defined. So there are different stages of creating enclosures, from absolutely, you know, just one line to dot to columns to just a shadow to creating this total enclosure. Now, other aspect of it is you have to feel the space. It's not only creating enclosure, but creating feelings within the enclosure. And when you start feeling the enclosure, you have to start looking at all these, you know, 5 senses, and that's where each of these sense has a reaction to it, and then that's what almost all the religions, if you see temple, churches, mosques, every religion has exploited this idea of you know, dealing with these senses. So for Buddhists, when you know, walk around, you touch these drums, and then you hear the sound of these you know, these drums. You hear that gong and you touch it and feel it. So you are sensitizing your hearing, your touch. Every religion has used these bells or some kind of a sound. It's not just necessarily the bell, but so it's about hearing. If you see in churches, the volume is enhanced so much that there is this idea of reverberation. So when you pray, you hear that vibration and your whole body feels that. No? So what this volume does is it enhances the sounds. It creates that reverberation which sort of runs through your body. There is a play of light always. So you are trying to sort of sensitize your eyes. And what these stained glass windows, they do is bring in this wonderful light inside. Even the temples, you'll see the play of light and shade and start observing those lights. Again, sensitizing smell, and there are different ways of sensitizing that. And one of the ways is like you offer flowers to God, and you are sensitizing your nose. And you know, there are different ways of using incense, agarbatti, you know. And finally, taste. You have tirtha prasadana. And this is actually the celebration of all senses. So you have play of sound, play of smell, play of light, play of, breeze onto your body. And then you have this tirtha, prasad and all. And then this is what is a real celebration of all the senses. You will travel a lot. You will have to learn to see, as I have been talking about. And then you'll have to do a lot of sketching. And it's not necessary that you would become great. I mean, it's not necessary that you have to be great in sketching, but it's important to sketch down certain things, more like ideas, observe things. So this is in Turkey. When you start looking at that space and sketching it, so I started looking at it, but I looked at it as a section and realized that space was kind of a square in section. So when you start and looking at it, that whole thing was kind of a squarish in section. So you have to start exploring certain things. It's not only looking at just a form and copying it, but try to find the idea behind it and how you can use it in different spaces. So if you see Satyajit Ray's films, as a director, what he used to do is he used to draw these sequences of ideas. So every sequence he would draw it himself. What will happen first and what will happen second and third and all. So this whole sequence he would draw, and then he will take camera and start shooting and then put his characters according to this. And something similar you have to do, and now you have so many softwares to do walkthroughs and all, but our time there was this book called Townscape by Gordon Cullen. So if you really look at it, this is the first sequence. So you walk through this gate, and then you see this pillar, you go close to the pillar, and then you see this base of the pillar, then you walk past that, and then you go somewhere towards that, and you see that church, and then you walk towards the church, and you see one small gateway. So you walk through that gateway, and you see something else, and you go beyond, and you see this entire valley beyond that. So that's the sequence, as visual sequences, and you have to learn to sort of explore ideas as you walk from one space to another and try capturing it. So it's a part of learning to see, learning to sketch. And while designing also, I mean, this is something which I would do it in every project where you start sketching and try to, but it will come later, don't worry about it now. But this is something just to make you aware that how you would be doing it. So whenever you see a site, you start imagining how the building would sit onto it. And you go through this entire process of analyzing how the water will flow onto it, how the temperature, how the sun moves, how the rain falls onto it, how the place smells like, whether it is dusty, whether it is, which side is a good view and all, and you start drawing sketches and all. And then this is what I had drawn after seeing the site, and I imagined that there would be trees there, though there were not many trees when I saw the site. And then this is what it was done. And slowly when it was done, there was hardly any, there were just rocks there. But then you start planting trees, allow nature to take over. And within next couple of years, these trees grow, and then they grow further, and then birds start coming and then nesting there, and then completely nature changes. And after 5 years, the way you had imagined it, the space starts looking like that. So start looking at these things. And finally, architecture is about, this college is something which is going to encourage creativity into you. It's going to make you think big. It's a place to inspire. But there's always this difficult thing is, can creativity be taught? But like Korea said, he says, I'm not sure it can be taught, but I'm sure that it can be learned. And that's where you have all these wonderful teachers around you to make you learn how to think creativity. And there are different ways. It's not like any other courses in architecture. It's not only a planned interaction which happens in the lecture hall and studio. But as I said, you have to observe things, and there's a lot of chance learning, chance interaction which happens. So you have to start interacting with your friends, take ideas, very, very, take those interaction as also place of, learning. It's each thought, each challenge is idea, and then you should see how to take it forward. And then whether as an individual, as a group, it's important to do things by hand. Just last week, I was listening to one of the talks by Peter Zumta, one of these very famous, architect, very respected architect. And he said that when I take any student in my office, I make sure that at least for 1 year he had done something by using hands, some kind of a craft. He said it can even be knitting is okay, or working with mechanics, mechanical thing, or anything, but doing something by hand, because doing something by hand makes a lot of difference, because your hand also thinks. So it's not only about writing and it's about theories, but doing things by hand becomes extremely important. And I was again listening to one of the talk by Anand Mahendra, and he was saying that why in US there are so many inventors, there are so many Nobel laureates, and why does it happen? And then he says that it could be because they have this garage culture. Most of them have their garage and they have their toolkits there. And every weekend they will open their bike, they might open their car, or they will assemble some furniture thing. So doing things by hand and assembling and putting it together is part of their life. And that's where they tend to get a lot of ideas. So for us as architects, it's important to do things by hand. And this is something you would be doing in next 5 years, and installing things. The second part of it is this is something, again, a very, very important part of our profession, and you have to be aware of it right from the first day, that you should be able to communicate. You should be able to convince the client or somebody, because you are not building for yourself, you are building for somebody else. You are building somebody else. You might be doing your own house, but you can't be doing it for all your life. You would be doing things for other client, for corporates, for factory or somebody else. So you should learn this ability to express your ideas and convince others. So there's this whole process of jury which would happen, and you have to learn, you have to be there to convince the teachers what you are doing is right, and you have to take pride in what you are doing. And that becomes extremely important part of your learning experience. So architecture is about working together. It's not only you and your ideas. You will be always working as a team with your colleagues. Then you need to have a client who would ask you to build something for you. So client becomes part of the team. Then you need an engineer. You need a great engineer. So it could be a structural engineer. It could be mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, plumbing, sound systems, everything. So you would be working with different engineers to put your ideas, give it a form, give it a technologically, it has to be correct. And then finally, there has to be somebody to execute it on the site. So there is a builder, there is a contractor. So it's a combination of everything. And even if one of these elements don't fit in, the whole product, gets spoiled. And so you have to be a good manager. You have to be a good motivator. You have to be somebody who can motivate everyone and say that, okay, let's do this, which will become something great, which can influence next generation, and it can become a landmark, and it can be something more, which can really change the life of probably a poor person, or maybe it might make a difference to our planet. And you have to be more sensitive about it. So it's working together. Now, especially as a student, you all get confused. Even we get confused. When you make a start, you wonder, have I made a right start? Should I jump? And if person sitting next to me is taking a different direction, should I do it like what he is doing or what she is doing? I feel what is most important to have a clear goal. And once you have a clear goal, whether you take this path or that path, it doesn't matter. Just concentrate, just Just believe in what you're doing, and finally you will reach the top. And that's what is probably the most important thing. So finally, it's about taking care. So architecture is more than anything else. It's about taking care of the client, is taking care of his or her requirements, taking technology, taking care of climate, taking care of sustainability of everything, and be sensitive that make sure that we are not damaging our planet, and then we live together as a as a more healthy society, and that's what is more important. So I love this statement by Picasso: every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once you grow up. And that's what that first picture of that child, what I showed you, that, when you are young and there's so much, brightness in the eyes that you are looking at, you are smelling something new, seeing something new, touching something new. And that same eyes you see in Picasso's, it's the same glitter, same, he wants to find out something new with, these are some pieces of bread, but he sort of converts it into something else. So he is always looking at something creative. As I said, there are ideas lying around you all the time. Absorb them, grasp them, try to convert them into something wonderful. And that's what we have to struggle for. So these are some works, whether it's a house, this is a house, this is another larger house, this is what is recently completed, or a housing project, or this is a hospice with water, this is a temple, this is a research lab, again a research lab, and a memorial. So you would be working for different clients, different requirements, different owners, but it's important to challenge things. It's important to, question things. And this is one of the corporate office for Titan we did recently. So you would be doing all these different things and questioning things, but what is important is to enjoy the process. And as I said, start looking at the world from different point of view, learn to see things around you, and then you will enjoy the whole process. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I took more than 45 minutes. No?
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, it was wonderful. No?
Yeah.
Actually, it was Govind's
Yeah,
idea to
very-
bring you on board. Thank you so much for that great idea. Sanjay,
Yeah.
amazing. I never tire of seeing your work.
It was.
It's so inspiring. No?
Amazing.
Yeah, I think, do they have any questions? I mean, they're free to ask questions if you have, or if you want to carry through with some.
Yes, students, if you have any questions, please feel free and ask.
And again, don't be scared of asking questions, because I used to be one of that who would be always, even now, I'm always scared of asking questions. But if you, sometimes you wonder, you go back and say, oh, I should have asked that question. And then even if it sounds stupid, it doesn't matter, because eventually its idea is to learn, and idea is to learn from each other. So however stupid that question might be, really doesn't matter. Don't feel shy. Just ask, and that is the only way one learns. And I think things are very simple. Don't complicate it. Simplify it. I always remember that one of the things which we used to discuss during Facebook group, and this Navnath Kanade used to tell this story about Mr. Doshi, that when Doshi would take a class, he would tell the students that whatever you learned in the class, you should go back and explain the same thing what you have learned to your grandmother in your local language. So in your mother tongue, if you can explain what you learned to your grandmother, then you have actually learned it. if not, then it's not. Then that learning is very superfluous. It's not deep learning, and that I always sort of remember. How important it is to understand, uncomplicate the thing rather than complicate the thing. Simplify things.
I think
I think no one has questions.
no, there's some interesting comments, Sanjay. Neha, could you please tell sir directly what you said, what you wrote? Neha and Shruti after that. There are,
Just a second, sir.
yeah, if you could show your face, that would be lovely.
I
Hi, Neha.
So I don't know if it's dumb, but I want to know one of your projects, the Titan's office or something. It was concerned with water, and do you add a water filtering system to like maintain a view or add tiles on the bottom, or is it just part of the environment that you added the building on?
which one we are talking about? What?
I think the Titan.
Okay. Titan is a biolake. So
Sorry, sir.
Titan is a biolake. We call it biolake, which has fish in it, which has plants in it. So
I thought it was a
it's
water.
like any other lake. But to do that, you have to work with certain consultant, and we worked with one consultant from Malaysia called Hong, and he's expert in dealing with these kind of water bodies because it's a very, very sensitive subject. If it is not handled properly, it will start smelling. It will start having mosquitoes breeding into it. So there is certain method. And there is some small filtration system where there are some there are pipes which are laid which filter the water and circulate some small percentage of it, and then eventually it goes down to the lowest point, and whatever water, even if we use it for watering the plants and all, that also goes down there, gets filtered and gets pumped back into the system. So certain amount of fresh water keeps coming every day into it. And there is certain amount of movement, as you call it, the aeration, which happens into the system. So because of that, it remains sustainable, and there are a lot of fish inside. And these are all local fish. These are not ornamental colored fish. So whatever fish you get it into the lake, they have a system of scavenging the thing and cleaning it. But many times when you put this colored ornament, they tend to dirty the water. So this guy even specified the kind of fish that has to be put into the thing. And so it's a kind of a living system, but you have to make sure that it doesn't get spoiled. It needs certain amount of intervention.
Wow.
Thank you, sir.
But because of that,
Very nice.
birds have started coming. It's amazing to see so many birds.
Wow. That's a good question, Neha.
For the question.
Thank you, sir.
Shruti has a question for you. Shruti, could you show yourself? Hi, Shruti.
Yeah, hi,
Hi,
sir.
welcome.
Yeah, hi. Sir, I wanted to ask, when did you know for sure that you wanted to start your own practice, which is something I'm interested in. So I just wanted to know.
It's more than starting your own practice. It's only to do something onto the site which you believe in. Now whether you do it as your own practice or something else, it's a different thing. But it's about converting your idea into reality, and that's what is more important. So if you can't do it because of certain circumstances, then you find that freedom. If you don't have that freedom to translate your ideas into reality, then you will look at a different source. So if you are asking, when I was part of CNT, I had the same freedom of doing whatever I wanted to. So I enjoyed that phase where Govind was also part of that team, and we enjoyed doing that. And then
Yes,
at
very
one
lucky.
stage, sorry. And then one stage you.
I was very lucky to meet him.
And that one stage we made a smaller group and continued the same practice under a different name, but it's almost like we are still closely connected with CNT, and it's the same kind of thing. So it's what I want to put it briefly. What you should take pride in converting your ideas into reality, and that should be the aim,
Yeah.
Under that name, whether you get credit for it, that's all a different aspect of it.
Correct.
But process of, as I said, if you enjoy what you are doing, then you are not working, you are just having fun.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And if that can happen every day throughout your career, then that becomes the most enjoyable aspect. And that's what I think you should look for. That are you enjoying what you're doing? So
Yes, sir.
So it might sound great, but when you are actually in profession, there are so many hurdles. So it is not as rosy every day, because you have to deal with so many forces, because you have to deal with contractor, you have to deal with client, you have to deal with technology, and so there is continuous fight which is happening. And without compromising, you have to fight for it to get what you want to do. But because you have that aim, because you have that passion to do something, this becomes part of the process. It is not that once it is done, everyone is going to love it, everyone is going to enjoy it. So once you have that in your mind, this rest of this fight, you fight, but eventually at the end of it, you are the best friends. You fight with the engineer, you fight with the client, but the client also knows why he's fighting is because he's fighting because I am going to get best out of it eventually. So once that feeling comes in, then it's part of the thing. Even if you're asking client to spend more money sometimes, it is because he is going to get benefited in that. It's not you as an architect going to get benefited.
Yeah.
Good
Thank you,
question.
sir.
Wonderful question.
Yeah.
Sanjay, there's Miriam who's got a very, very deep question, very wise for a young, I call it wisdom of the youth. Miriam, could you please read out your question? Hi, Miriam.
Yeah. Hi, sir. So
Very
my
deep question.
is that we as humans now, we're encroaching into our forests and wildlife in general. And how do we as upcoming architects try not to do that or make our buildings more environmental friendly?
Yeah, wonderful. Actually, you are talking about sustainability, you are talking about that sensitivity of living together. So maybe you would have become more aware of it during lockdown, right? Because that's where you suddenly started realizing the value of it and the impact of it. So, and it's all up to us, the next generation, to be sensitive about it. And then it's not that planet belongs to you only, to human race, it belongs to everyone. And you have to learn to live together and to enjoy, sharing the planet. So there is something which, I'll give you a very simple example of how you have to be sensitive, because you would be using a lot of materials, since you said that how you should build. There is something called carbon footprint. You would have heard about it. That
Yes,
because
sir.
we are emitting carbon. Every time you breathe, you are emitting carbon dioxide. Every time you burn something, you are emitting carbon dioxide. When you are converting any fuel to run any vehicle or any machine, you are emitting carbon. So that carbon footprint is something which is increasing, and the whole idea is how do you restrict that carbon footprint. So what you should, as an exercise, what you should look at is every object that you see around, you try to see what is embedded energy in that. You know what is embedded energy? Now, suppose you look at this book. Now, to make this book, certain amount of energy would have gone into it, right? To make this paper, whether it might be a recycled paper or for that probably some trees might have to be cut. Then it has to go to a printing press to convert into that. So for running that press, certain energy would have gone. Then you have to sort of put it, assemble it, put it, and then it has to come from some shop to me. So while they're transporting certain amount of energy, so by the time it comes to me, it has already consumed certain amount of energy, which is an embedded energy into this object, right? Now, every object, if I look at this has probably 2000 times more embedded energy into it, right? Because every part in it has so much energy gone into it for making that. So when you use any of the product in your design, just try to remember what embedded energy each product has. And try to make sure that you use the least amount of embedded energy. So if I give you an example of, let's say, vitrified tile, that ceramic tile or something. It would use crushed stone or something, but it has to go to the kiln and it has to get heated to a certain amount of temperature. And then it comes back to you, and then that polishing takes a certain amount of energy. But if you use a stone which comes straight out of a quarry, which is a rough stone, it would have much lesser embedded energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes,
you
sir.
followed what I'm saying, right? So look at it for every material component that you specify, that you use. So sometimes you feel very sad when people suggest some Italian marble and all, because when you have some material locally available, why do you have to bring it from Italy and then spend so much cost on transporting it, and then so that in the travel itself the embedded energy increases.
Yeah.
So that's the reason you use local material. If you can excavate and use the same earth to create something that is even more, but it has disadvantage that it's not going to last long. So you have to balance your ideas, your thoughts. If it has to last for next 100 years, you'll use a different material, but you'll use a material which could be recycled, which could be more environmental friendly. So it's not that you build everything with mud, but you invent something and try to take rational decisions.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Use appropriate technology, not just the technology for the sake of technology.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, maybe last question or anything else. Maybe another 10 minutes.
Alicia, is that okay?
Yes, sir, definitely. No problem. Anybody else wants to ask something?
If nobody is going to ask any, please try and see if you can ask. Can I request Govind to give some points regarding this whole beautiful discussion and presentation? Because you've been teaching first year for long.
Sorry, Arun, tell me.
You've been teaching first year for a long time, and you've seen practice. You work with Sanjay, and the story.
Yes.
So could you just give our kids a little more?
Add to
what Sanjay said.
Question to architect Sanjay Mohin. See, a lot of students usually have this problem of starting trouble. They always have starting trouble. Like, how do you start the design? Where do you start the design? So, Mohi, if you want to say something about it.
Yeah, actually, I try to simplify that, and I divide it into two aspects: measurable aspect and immeasurable aspect. Measurable part is, the climate is measurable. Climate. So if the moment you say that you are designing at a particular, let's say in Bangalore, so you have to understand the rainfall of Bangalore, you have to understand the temperature of Bangalore, you should understand the wind direction at your place, how it moves, the sun movement, everything. So that is all measurable. That you cannot say that I don't know about it. The functionality is measurable. So if you are designing your own house, you have to understand your requirements. You should know your family structure, like how many people, whether who needs privacy. If you have grandparents, they need more care. So that has to be designed in a different way. If you need a study room which needs a quiet place, whether you need to look out into a place or you need a light coming in from particular direction, all that one has to understand. So these functionality is measurable, climate is measurable, technology is measurable. So you master that first, and then you go to immeasurable and say, I want to, create an inspiring space, or I want to create something which would, that you have a philosophical angle to it. So that part comes later. So if you say I want to create a happy place, now what is that happy place that is? Now that becomes immeasurable. That becomes more personal. Right? So what is happy for one student one person need not be happy for the other student. So, but that doesn't matter because you design it from your point of view. So first you address the measurable part, and then you move on to something which is a larger conceptual kind of a thing. So I think to put it so that way that starting trouble won't come. That's what I feel.
Oh, you've actually kept it well, very well. Thank you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't look convinced.
So he said it all.
Govind doesn't look convinced, I said.
Yeah. No,
Govind? Not convinced?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's for the benefit of students.
Yes.
Yeah. So he said it all from autumn to most complex. So finally, as teachers, I think we have to take them into details and how to execute things. So he talked about design and inspirations and climate. Literally everything he has touched, from again like tangible to untangible. Everything he has touched. Yeah. Like one thing, like we, like he showed some, images, caves and all. So in future, actually, if at all, offline classes start, we are going to see a lot of stuff like that. Every year almost we have been taking them to like to see some nature and etc. So one thing I just add to this is like. Somebody said there is something like a primary design. Like for example, we have human being, or to any other, two-legged animal or bird is creation of God, and then like in any like designer copying that in the sense, in concept, in principle, like suppose when you create a bike, for example, it has got two wheels and two handles, and then there is a light, which everything resembles a living creature. Again, if you design a car, that's like a four-legged animal. So if you go and see a cave, I think a primary design, for built space. That's why we go and see the cave and observe the lighting. I don't know. There is a place called Antargange near Kolar. I mean, amazing, lighting and spaces. It's beautiful. Whatever spaces you think of, it's all there. Like there are very cozy spaces. There is humongous spaces. There is beautiful direct light, indirect light, lateral light. Yeah, skylight. Imagine whatever normally we do in a building, almost everything. So that we go and see these caves and nature and things like that. And many architects have directly have copied nature, indirectly have copied nature, and sometimes we have taken inspiration from nature. So we are going to do hopefully a lot of traveling in the and of course, you have to learn from tradition and culture. Like if you see uh, vernacular architecture, like if you go to villages, then there are many buildings which sort of evolved through time, not built in one day. So it's all like whatever Mohit said about climate, and so these things are being taken care of, and so there's definitely a lot to learn from that. So hopefully we'll do a lot of traveling in coming future. And, yeah.
Thank you. I think, look forward to that too.
And sketching again, Mohit was talking about sketching. See, there is a lot of relation between creativity and sketching. So it's not just the field of art, but even if you see, some of the film directors like Roman Polanski, Satyajit Ray, etc. You see, they are not only directors; they are also good artists. They physically sketch. So the hand is actually an expression of your brain. So if you can put it, whatever you are thinking, that immeasurable thing in the brain, that comes out as a sketch, by your hand. So if uh, you have to constantly develop that skill of sketching, uh, and see, that's how you develop your creativity as well. So as the sketching improves, actually there is a direct relation, like it's proportional. So it's not like even if you take Doshi, he also sketches very well, beautiful. With simple sketches, you can capture that space, what you have got in your mind. You can capture it on the paper. That's the first starting point of your designing a building.
I think like Sanjay was showing in Turkey, you figured out it was a square in section. That was amazing. I mean, without sketching, I don't know how one would have discovered that.
Yeah, it's important to sort of note down those things.
And you have to observe the detail if you have to sketch, because a lot of people have got this habit of photography. Photography is good, but in a moment camera does all the work for you, but actually when you have to sketch, you have to sit and observe the detail. There is a way of sketching. So automatically you notice, observe, taking things into you. It all happens, with sketching, especially sight sketching.
Anything else from students? Anisha, how are we for time? We're almost through.
Yes, sir.
Sanjay,
Yeah.
thank you so much for
Thanks.
giving your valuable time.
Not at all. Pleasure. Enjoyed being part of this.
Can,
And all the best to all the students. And have fun, work hard. And while working hard, enjoy the whole process. That's what is more important.
Thank you.
And you have wonderful teachers with you,
Thank you.
which would make all the difference.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such a dynamic session. And the last point of discussion was actually very, very significant in today's scenario. So I hope the students benefit from these. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sanjay. And thanks, Govind,
Thank
for
you, sir.
starting the whole thing.
Thank you, Mohit. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you, students. Look forward to seeing you Monday onwards.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Alicia.
Welcome, sir. My pleasure.